Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
Welcome to a Daftaboutcraft special. It is Monday, April the 28th, 4 days before the launch of a brand new brewery. The brewery in question is Coldframe from Cornwall, and we're speaking to Simon, who runs Coldframe, about what it's like to launch a brewery and the last few days in the build-up to launch day. So welcome to the podcast, Simon.
Hiya, how's it going?
Well, we're fine. How's it going for you? That's the big question.
Yeah, it's been a busy few weeks, but we're on that home stretch now. So everything's packaged. We've got all of the pre-orders in, so all of those are going to be shipped out tomorrow. So I think it's kind of one of those things where we're pretty much done, and then it's just kind of the launch on Friday. So it's prepping for all of that.
Where is the launch and what's going to be happening on Friday?
So we've got a shipping container on the industrial site that we're on, right opposite the train station. So it's in Lostwithiel in Cornwall, probably about 100 metres away from where the brewery is, and then kind of an outside space. It's a 20-foot shipping container. It is very basic, but we have really big, cool following there. So we had it open last year. I'll kind of come on to kind of where we've started and kind of where we are now. But yeah, we had it open last year. It was a huge success last year, and so we've decided to do it again this year. Recently, we've had Ideal Day Brewery, who I think was one of your guests a few weeks ago.
Certainly were.
Yeah, they've moved on to the industrial estate site that we're based on. So this year we're sharing the shipping container with them. Last year it was pretty full on. So we were trying to kind of run the brewery, and we were also kind of working this at the weekends. So it's kind of nice to have a bit of a break from brewing and then kind of serving at the weekend. So yeah, we're going to share that. So that's really exciting to have that with us as well.
So what's the story then? How did you get to this point to launching Coldframe? What have you done before this?
So originally I was actually an architect or an architectural designer working for an architectural practice. A couple of them worked in Plymouth first of all, in Devon, and then Dartmouth in South Devon as well. I was doing that and I spent the time at university doing that, and I've brewed all my life. So started brewing with my granddad. He used to be kind of an avid home brewer, and he basically started to kind of teach me the craft. It was kind of basic stuff back then, kind of just doing kind of homebrew kits, but I kind of fell in love with it then. And when you're at school, nobody really tells you that being a brewer is a job. So you kind of go down different avenues, and yeah, mine happened to be design. So yeah, I was a designer for 10 plus years, and then it kind of got to a point where I just realized it just wasn't fulfilling me anymore, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So me and my partner Sarah, we decided to take a small sabbatical from work and took 3 months off to basically try and figure out what I wanted to do. In that time, I realized that what I loved doing was making things. And so different ideas of what we could do. And then it sort of dawned on me that brewing has been this huge part of my life, not just brewing, but fermenting things. So yeah, we make kimchi, we do sourdough bread, we ferment things. So it's kind of always been just a part of my life. It was, how do we turn this into an actual job? So then we kind of got back from that, and I had to go back to architecture, but was doing it on a freelance basis. And at that time, I was not working so much in architecture as much as I kind of should have been, and was spending time at local breweries, kind of helping out and doing the GCB qualification with the kind of final intention of working in a brewery. It wasn't a case of sort of starting a brewery. I just kind of wanted to work in one. So it happened that I was helping out at one brewery, which was Castle Brewery, and the owner there was kind of coming up to retirement and offered to hand me the reins of the brewery. And kind of quite naively, I took the brewery on without too much hesitation, and at the time was working architecture whilst running the brewery side of it, very locally focused. So all of the beers were going to kind of local pubs and very kind of cask focused. But my passion kind of through my kind of home brewing was more on the yeast forward beers, kind of a lot of Belgian beers. That was what I was brewing at home. It's what I was drinking, kind of mainly mixed fermentation beers. So one of my biggest inspirations for what I was doing was Wildflower Beer in Australia, who use native flowers to create a yeast culture. So that's basically one of the things that I started doing at Castle Brewery, and trying to create these mixed fermentation beers from locally sourced yeast. And basically this was the inspiration for Coldframe.
Well, I've had Wildflower beers and I love them. So if your beers are going to be like theirs, happy days.
Yeah, so with Castle Brewery, we actually won the National SIBA Award back in March for the wild and mixed fermentation category. So they're very good beers, and from yeast that we've propagated from the local landscape. From that, the idea was developed. I've always wanted to create beers which reflect the place in which they're brewed, going back to those farmhouse traditions where they were creating beer from the surroundings. So this was the inspiration for Coldframe. And the yeast is great, and it's something that I drink all the time, but it's not something that a lot of people are kind of into. So if you do want to dip your toe in the water with these types of beers, it's often kind of quite hard to find one that I want to drink. So that's when the idea came to see what other ingredients we could use from the local surroundings. Down where we are in Cornwall, hops aren't really something that grows well down here. Our climate isn't really right for them down here. We're a bit too wet. So it was barley. So the farm that we use, they are probably about 15 miles from the brewery, maybe slightly less. And they grow barley. They used to supply maltsters, but they've stopped doing that now. And most of theirs goes to feed barley. But it's still a malting variety barley grown to kind of malting specifications. We take it from them and use it direct in the beer without basically foregoing the malting process.
Would that be the same place that Ideal Day use as well?
No. So theirs is wheat. So they're focused on the wheat, and they're very focused on the kind of regenerative agriculture side, whereas ours is the place-driven beers. So it's getting ingredients from as close to the brewery as possible.
Tapping into the sort of Little Earth project kind of thing.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other breweries as well, but they are often malting it themselves. So there's a couple of breweries, kind of Riggs and Furrow, I believe, are malting their own barley. Yep. So they're growing that barley and then doing it Hawkstone as well, obviously. But this is kind of one of the other things that we're sort of looking at. It's for two reasons, really. We're using raw barley because we don't have the scale to be malting the barley ourselves. I believe it's 10 tons that you need to malt at once. It would take us a long time to use that malted barley at the scale we currently are. The second reason is there's a lot of embodied carbon within the malting process and a huge amount of water use. So first of all, you've got the shipping from wherever it is to wherever it is, and then the shipping back, plus the heat that you need to malt the barley, and also the water usage to start the process off for malting.
So with the types of beers you're making, you've sort of tested the waters with Castle Brewery, and now you're ready to go it alone under your own banner. How do you think your beers will be received in the local area?
So we've got a really good connection with a few pubs kind of locally, pubs and bars locally. We've been kind of keeping them abreast of what we're doing for the whole time and giving them samples. So it's taken sort of 6 months of trials, and probably 6 months of that, 6 months before that, of research into actually how to brew with unmalted barley. Beer has been brewed for 5,000 years using malted barley, and we are, as I know of, the second brewery to do 100% raw barley beers. So we're bucking a trend of sort of 5,000 years, and it's all come through the development of enzymes that we can use in the brew house. It's a fortuitous time to kind of be doing that. Going back to your questions, we've been kind of the past 6 months developing lots of trial beers on my old homebrew kit, and just trying to nail down a process which works, because the brewery that we've got is a really traditional kit. A wooden clad single infusion basic brewery, and the enzymes that are created are more developed for step mashing. So it's basically creating that process where we can use this barley on this small kit. So we've had loads of trials, which were basically just been, every time we delivered to a place, it's, here, have some cans, try this, what do you think? And it's kind of been that process of getting the feedback from these guys, sort of what they think of the idea, and kind of developing it that way. I think a lot of the traditional pubs, it probably isn't going to be something that resonates with them so much, but kind of more of the craft focused ones, I think it's something that they quite like.
That's what made me ask the question, really, because obviously the beer scene down there is probably a bit more traditional than in other places across the UK. And I just sort of wondered how, your more traditional drinker would cope with your styles of beers.
Yeah, so I think that the first two launch beers, so you've obviously got the Seasons Change, which is the lager, which I think the biggest selling product in Cornwall is lagers, but generally it's kind of the macro lagers. And it's the same across the country. Macro lagers is kind of what sells. So craft lagers are always going to be kind of a hard sell to the majority of pubs down here, but kind of flavor wise, I think it's not too different from kind of other craft lagers. So the kind of raw barley, you are definitely getting that kind of raw flavor from it, slightly more grainy flavored, potentially slightly bready.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I've just pretty much polished off a can of it.
Yeah.
There's a lovely sweetness to it as well.
Yes, yeah. So it actually finishes really dry. The gravity at the end is quite dry, but that malted barley, the unmalted barley, gives it a sweet flavour. It's been one of those things, kind of the past sort of 6 months of developing the technique has also been developing what styles work and what styles don't work.
So this particular lager, how many incarnations has that been through? How many tweaks has it had along the way to get it to this point?
So to get to this one, we are probably on... The lagers was kind of the main one that I was kind of trying to nail, just because at the launch it was a case of I wanted something where that unmalted barley really shone and wasn't bogged down by anything else. So this is probably version 9 or 10. Basically the same recipe, but just tweaking things kind of over and over.
You've done a lot of research to get to this point.
Yeah. So luckily, Sarah, my partner, she's at university at the moment. So she's doing her master's and she's got access to the university database of academic papers. So I've been trawling them and spent kind of a lot of time. So it's theoretically been done a lot of times in the academic sphere, and it's mainly to do with countries that have more unmodified grains and how they can brew in those countries with the less modified grains. And then there's been theoretical research on 100% unmalted barley to kind of look at a couple of things, really. So the sustainability aspect, which I mentioned, and then working in countries where malting just isn't a thing that's done. So a lot of kind of African countries where they're using kind of sour gum or other things, and barley isn't a readily available resource.
It's fascinating, Dave, isn't it? Because we speak to a lot of breweries and a lot of smaller breweries who haven't been going for that long. And what we find is they'll start the brewery, launch some beers, and then keep tweaking them for the first 6 months or a year. But you've done your tweaking before you've started. You've done it the other way around.
Yeah, and I think that's been the huge benefit of having Castle Brewery going in the background. I've had the opportunity to do this. I've had the other ingredients readily available and the equipment to do it. So yeah, the kind of Castle Brewery side has kind of fallen by the wayside because this has been something that's just been exciting me for a year, looking into the kind of raw barley side. It's kind of culminated in these two first beers, and then we're brewing the third one tomorrow.
So have you literally sort of had the last 6 months, your head in the brewery or in a book or in these papers and just absorbing all the information you can to get to this point?
Yeah, it has been. So yeah, it's been as much research as I could kind of do onto it, as much tweaking and playing around with recipes and brewing these different beers, whilst also trying to keep Castle Brewery afloat while I'm excited about something else.
So is Castle Brewery now still going, or has that ceased to exist?
So the Castle Brewery will continue as a cask-led brewery. Going back to kind of what we were talking about, the kind of local market, we do have quite a few pubs locally that take our cask beer, and it goes down really well. Since I took over the brewery 2.5 years ago, I've won 3 national SIBA awards with the brewery. It was mainly doing things that kind of have inspired Coldframe, but also they're beers that are highly regarded locally now. So yeah, it's kind of going to be these two breweries working side by side. My current gut feel is Coldframe is where my heart is and where my mind has been for the past year.
You're very brave operating 2 breweries at the same time.
So I think it's one of the things is that the 2 breweries are so vastly different. So we've got the kind of traditional side, which I do love traditional cask ales. I love making them. I love drinking them. When I go to a local pub, I won't be drinking the craft keg beer. I will be drinking a cask beer. So it does have a kind of a place in my heart. But yeah, it was this idea of Coldframe and the raw barley and basically keeping the 2 quite separate in the approach that we're going down the route of in terms of how we're marketing it and selling it and the beers we're making.
So the way I see this is that the brewery that already exists, it'll sort of almost take care of itself, and your heart and passion will go into Coldframe.
Yeah, so we've got varying size tanks in the brewery. So the cask goes into the smaller tanks that we have. So they're 500 litre tanks, and that basically ticks over on its own. We have orders coming in from pubs that buy it. We do quite well over the summer with beer festivals. We have tons of beer festivals in Cornwall that are all cask led. So yeah, that will basically tick over on its own, and we'll continue to do that. And then this is the Coldframe is kind of where the efforts are kind of going to be pushed to really expand outside of Cornwall.
So on Friday, when the brewery launches officially, so you're going to have the container. So that will be open to the public, and they can come along and buy their beers there.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have 6 lines on. So it'll be free from Ideal Day. The 2 Coldframe beers that we're launching, plus one of the old Castle Brewery beers on as well. Those 6 beers on, and it will be every Friday and Saturday throughout the summer.
Okay.
We'll be open there. But yeah, the kind of the focus this first weekend is kind of on the Coldframe launch. But then we've also got a selection of other beers that people can drink.
So what's behind the name of Coldframe? You've obviously spoken at length about the brewery and the USP of it. But first of all, what was sort of the thinking with the name?
Coming up with a brewery name is so difficult. It took us a long time to get to where we wanted to be with it. But it was to do with the greenhouses, the sort of small little greenhouses that you get in your back garden, the cold frames that you have. And it's about growing things and nurturing things in a small scale way. So not a big greenhouse, you're nurturing those small things.
Obviously, you've spoken a lot about what makes Coldframe different with this unmalted barley. Does using unmalted barley provide its own sort of challenges with brewing?
Yeah, so there's quite a few differences, to be honest. So one of the main reasons for malting barley is to release the enzymes, which can convert the starch in the barley into fermentable sugars. So the initial step for malting is the germination. During the germination phase, the enzymes are released, which are then halted to kind of keep the enzymes in place. And then those are then used when you mash the beer. So when you're adding the water and the warm water, those enzymes become activated and convert the starch into sugar. So with unmalted barley, there's none of those enzymes present, or a very, very small amount. So we have to use enzymes that we get from a manufacturer, fairly new product on the market. So they produce the enzymes through the fermentation of bacteria which are found on mushrooms, certain types of mushrooms. So they do a fermentation of their own, create the enzymes. Those enzymes are then packaged, and then we use those enzymes in the mash with the unmalted barley to do the conversion into sugar. And then there's a couple of other process bits on there. So malted barley has a less porous husk, so it's kind of a crunchier husk. I like to call it a crunchier husk. So during the malting process, it's kilned at a certain temperature, which dries out the kind of husk on the outside of the barley. When you crack open the barley, that then is a kind of filter for the liquid to run through. When you're using unmalted barley, the husk is still fairly soft, so we have to kind of use oat husks. The outside of the oats, which have been dried, but they're basically a waste product from the oat industry. So we use oat husks, which gives us the kind of fermentability. And then there's also a couple of other kind of processing pieces in terms of the kind of thickness of the mash. So it's a lot more gummy. So you've got a lot more beta glucans in unmalted barley than you do in malted barley. So it thickens up the mash. And then acidity as well is another thing that we have to adjust.
So when people are drinking your beers, obviously there's a lot of science involved here.
Yeah.
Do you think your average drinker will be able to notice something different about your beers?
I think the average drinker, I think you will get the flavour difference, but I don't think you would necessarily associate that with the fact that it's raw barley. So this is one thing that we talk about kind of over dinner quite a bit. It's how do we basically tell people what we're doing and why what we're doing is different. So kind of whole speech just then when you asked what the differences are in terms of actually making these beers, it's how do I get that so people are actually kind of interested and kind of want to follow along with it.
Yeah.
I've been so in depth in this for so long that to me, it's just natural and second nature. And then when I talk to any of my friends or family, their eyes glaze over instantly. And it's like, I need to figure out a way of shouting about what we're doing in a way that kind of resonates with people.
The passion's definitely there. I mean, it shines through, and it shines through in the beer. And as you would have to be, you're obviously extremely knowledgeable on the subject. It is very intense to try and wrap your head around all the sort of different terms and things that you're saying. And it's really interesting. It's fascinating. We've talked to brewers a lot and would have them generally down as the best ones we've probably talked to, always sort of slightly on the mad scientist level, but never happy with what they've done, always tinkering, always wanting to do something different, change an element here or there. This is sort of that, but almost to another level, it feels like. I've just finished off your extra pale. I would say is the least extra pale I've ever had, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I could have had the lager, I think, with how Dave described the lager, and I would have thought it might have been this beer, because this has quite a lagery sweetness as well, I found.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
and is that the sort of effect of the barley?
Yeah, I think so. So that was obviously one of the trial ones. Yeah, and it was basically trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. So hop-wise, it is very similar to the lager. That one uses, again, all English hops. So it has a slightly higher bitterness than the lager, and also uses an ale yeast. So you're getting slightly more of the kind of flavour compounds from the yeast. But yeah, it doesn't come through kind of, the flavours of the yeast don't come through a huge amount on that one. Again, it was a kind of trial at how do we make beers that really make this raw barley shine.
I would say it does that.
So going forward, are you going to be making lots of different beers, or are you just going to focus on 2 or 3, or are you going to keep wanting to push forward all the time and test the boundaries?
The 2 that we're releasing on Friday, I'll definitely brew the lager again because I love the taste of it, but they've kind of always been designed as kind of one-offs. And the next beer, so we're making another one tomorrow, which is a wheat beer. So it features raw barley, so it has malted wheat in that one. So we're kind of going to develop what we're doing in the brewery. So the first 2 I wanted to be 100% raw barley. In order to make a lot of the other styles, we're going to need to use smaller amounts of malted barley, but the raw barley will always be the sugar source. So it'll always be the base grain. So that will always be the thing that is producing the sugars that we then ferment, and then we'll be using the kind of malted barley as accentuation and colour. So accentuation of flavour and colour. But yeah, we sort of see it being lots of one-off beers, just testing what we're doing until we can find our feet. The brewery is me. I say we a lot. Sarah works full-time and then helps me in the evenings and weekends on everything she can while studying for a master's.
How does she feel about all of this? There's now 4 days until you launch. At this point, is she sick and tired of it, or is she really excited now?
No, she's excited now as well. So she wasn't a beer drinker until I really started getting into home brewing, however many years ago that was. Yeah, so until I kind of started to take it really seriously, she was a non-beer drinker. And then I started to kind of play around with more and more yeast-forward beers, and those were the ones that kind of started to resonate with her. And now she's an absolute beer lover, and she was never kind of fully on board with everything we were doing at Castle Brewery. She loves a stout, but kind of any other kind of traditional cask styles she's not into. She loves a saison. She loves a kind of mixed firm beer as well. So going down this route of the raw barley, she's fully on board with basically the goal that we're trying to get to.
Is she ready for Coldframe to consume her whole life?
Yeah, I think so.
And are you ready for that?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm a lot happier doing this now. It was becoming kind of a slog. Doing the beers that I kind of wanted to do at Castle Brewery, and then kind of winning the awards that we did, and it kind of never seemed to really progress forward because I was just kind of going with the flow of it. And now it's a case of I'm really pushing forward with something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm kind of fully behind. And yeah, it's kind of that sort of extra happiness at home and coming home buzzing from what I've been doing, and it's kind of made just life nicer.
Like Dave said before, that really shines through, and you clearly know where you want to take this.
Yes, yeah.
Did you, or would you have hopes with with the sort of yeast side of things, obviously like Verdant would spring to mind because they have their own Verdant yeast now. Are you hoping to get to the point where a Coldframe beer will have, or it might already, and apologies if it does, the Coldframe yeast is, and you've got your strain and that goes and becomes a staple?
Yeah, so going back to what I was saying earlier about a lot of what I've been doing and been trying to do is create place-driven beers, so beers that reflect the place that they were made. So the beers that I was doing with the wild yeast, I was trying to go through a process of isolating yeast from some of the mixed cultures that I'd been using, and whilst doing that, I was also researching into the raw barley. So the raw barley overtook the yeast project, but the ultimate goal is to one day be able to create a single origin beer. So all of the ingredients come from a single source, including the yeast. So that's the ultimate goal. We're a long way off that. Yeah, it will be years.
That's a great aim, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think one of the beauties with the way that we've kind of gone about this with Castle and moving it forward into Coldframe is we've stayed small and agile, and I run the brewery myself. We don't have staff. Sarah pitches in when we have extra things that need doing, and then we've got plenty of very good friends that do like to kind of help out. A couple of them are really avid home brewers, so they love to come into the brewery. I had a couple of them in recently helping me do some canning. So we've got like a good group of friends and family that are really behind what we're doing. And yeah, it possibly one of my earlier posts on Instagram was a lot of what we're doing is about connection, a connection with place and connection with people, and connecting with other friends and sort of family over beer, and then trying to push that out to kind of connections with people that are drinking it. So that's one of the really nice things about having the container bar and running it ourselves. We get to see those people enjoying the beer and having a good chat with them. So that's been kind of a really nice thing about the brewery. It's that connection with people.
What is your biggest worry at this stage?
Biggest worry? That people hate it. I think that's I've sort of been so absorbed in this for so long and kind of trying to develop it that I now love the beers, and you kind of give them to a friend and family, and then you're sort of looking at them and being like, are you liking
trying
this?
Not to wince while you're drinking it.
So are you just saying that you like this because I've spent so much time on it, or do you actually like it, and have I just conditioned myself to enjoy this? So yeah, I think that's my biggest worry.
Have you managed to suss out the people who are telling you the truth from the ones that are just saying what you want to hear?
No, I don't, because some of them will say that they hate it as well. And
okay.
Then they kind of turn around and say, actually, no, I really did love it.
I think the week you're launching, actually, you couldn't have picked a better week for the styles of beers you're releasing and the weather. Yeah. They really marry together well, I think. Yeah,
definitely. So, yeah, obviously the first two are just super pale. They haven't been malted, so they have no colour, and they are both very crisp and really refreshing. Timing-wise, because I've been looking at this for a while, and it's like, when do we launch? And it was always kind of the intention to launch sort of mid-spring time. The beers suited that time of year. And as the year changes, we're going to be introducing the malted barley for the colour and kind of the sort of darker beers. And so the beers will follow the seasons. Again, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about we want to kind of try and keep a lot of these as sort of single releases.
I was going to say, I think you've answered that there, but I was just thinking, like, will it get to October, say, and I can still get the lager if I want it, or is it just going to be what is seasonal for then will be what you have available?
So I haven't planned that far ahead. But yeah, I think in my mind, I'm sort of telling myself that we will be making beers for the season. And so you might get a lager in October, but it's going to be a darker lager. It's not going to be the spring super pale.
Are we going to get a pumpkin spiced stout in October?
If I can find some grown locally, yeah, maybe. So this is kind of another thing that we would like to kind of start introducing. It is just more locally grown produce. So Cornwall has a huge agricultural heritage, and generally in Cornwall, smaller farms. So we've got a lot of small family-owned farms. So the farm that we buy our barley from, the farm is the farmer and the farmer's wife. That is the farm. They have some seasonal workers, but they're generally here for kind of a week a year to help with sowing or harvesting.
So the scale is very similar to your own.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what really resonated with us. So yeah, I went out and kind of met them, and we had like a really long discussion, and there was just a lot of similarities. He works on his own in the farm. He's got a dog very similar to ours. We had a good chat about dogs, and just
what dog have you got?
We've got a Sprocker Spaniel. Yeah, she's great. She's about just over 4.5 now. So she's got to that age now where she's calmed down, but she's a menace on the beach.
So as we move towards later in the year, towards Christmas, so I asked about sort of a little bit jokingly about the pumpkin spice stouts and stuff, but will you be looking to make sort of big, heavy stouts towards winter time?
Probably not big, heavy stouts. So I think it's not on the cards, but I'm not writing anything off. And yeah, it could be something that we potentially look at doing. What I am kind of most interested in is beers that I really like to drink. So big stouts, I like a lighter stout. But when it comes to kind of, anything sort of over sort of 7-8%, I don't really drink stouts that strong. I do love a lighter 4-5% stout. So that could be something we look at doing later.
Are you sort of hoping to tap into the tourist market as well, being in Cornwall? Yeah,
so I think it comes as part of living and working in Cornwall. This has been one of the difficulties with Castle Brewery. Kind of seasons are very seasonal. So it gets to summer, we're flat out. It gets to winter and there's not a huge amount of people around. So focusing on purely local trade, you have kind of huge dips in your sales between the summer and the winter. I know everyone gets those dips, but it feels quite a bit stronger with the tourist population in Cornwall over the summer.
So you were talking before about your sort of sourdoughs and all this sort of stuff. Are you going to be offering food at your venue as well?
We won't be doing it ourselves, but yeah, we're hoping to kind of get... So last year we had a few people helping out with food, so local food trucks. They will be coming back this year, but we haven't booked anyone in yet. It's been sort of all hands on deck with kind of getting this launch ready to...
I just got visions of you knocking out, some lovely sort of sourdough and cheeses and all sorts to go with the beers.
Yeah.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, don't get me started because I'd love to. So one of my favourite things to make is curry. I love making curries. Yeah, and I kind of said, wouldn't it be great if I made some curries and kind of people could eat the curries, and we make everything and make some sort of fermented kind of like kimchi style Indian veg and stuff as well to go with it. And I think I've got enough on my plate at the moment. But yeah.
Keep that for next year.
Yeah. When it's all calmed down, I'll be doing food, so I'll let you know.
Where do you sort of want Coldframe to get to? The thing I wonder, would you take outside help, or is this always going to just be your baby?
At the moment, at the scale we are, and it being sort of so young, it's difficult to sort of know where we go with it. It would be great in the future to be doing a lot more and kind of getting out to sort of farther reaching places. I think what we're doing is quite niche, but it isn't as niche as what we were doing with the mixed fermentation beers. So I think it does have a wider appeal, and I think it's just going to be a case of seeing how it goes. It would be nice to think about having some people, but I don't think I'll ever be able to let go of the reins because it's one of those ones where I love what I'm doing because I love it, and kind of moving back from that and taking kind of a more managerial role, I don't know how I feel about that. We shall see.
It's a tough one, isn't it? It really is. We speak to a lot of people, and because they're so invested in what they do, they don't want to hand over the reins to anybody. They just want to keep doing it. But if it goes really well, you are going to have to hand over the reins and allow some sort of help at some point.
Yeah, definitely. Like I was saying earlier, it's nice kind of having sort of friends and bits come in, and I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to stuff in the brewery, and I
find the best ones are normally.
I like things to be done in a certain way when I'm doing things, and then I'm not very good at explaining how I like those things done. It's more a case of, why don't you know how I like things to be done? So having friends in to help, it's nice to kind of start to get that trying to sort of tell them how I like things being done, and then for them to come back and say, actually, why don't you do it like this? And I'm like, I've never thought of it like that. There will come a time where I do need to kind of let go a bit, but for the minute, I'm enjoying playing around.
So you've got your beers ready for Friday's launch.
Yep.
And you've got beers in can gone all around the country as well.
Yes, yeah. So we've had more interest than I kind of originally anticipated that we were kind of going to have. I think it's resonated with people, kind of what we're looking to do with the raw barley and kind of place-driven beers. And yeah, we've got orders as kind of far north as Elgin in Scotland, and as far east as Tunbridge, and then as far west as Porthleven. Yeah, right down kind of every corner of the country we've got something going. And then yeah, lots of other bits kind of in the middle as well.
Is sort of local newspapers interested in what you're up to as well?
Yeah, so I did a press release a little while ago, and then I was supposed to do another one last week and didn't get round to it. So yeah, I feel like I've kind of missed the boat on that one. So I think it will be a press release afterwards. We were in a few papers with Castle Brewery Beer Awards. We were in the paper then. We were also in the Times as well with that one, which was nice. So yeah, Pete Brown. So yeah, that was great. Yeah, I did mention to Pete what we were doing, and again, he seemed interested in kind of what we were doing with the raw barley, and I never followed it up. So again, it's one of those things where it's going to be kind of a post-launch getting in contact with people that I've not managed to get back in contact with.
When you go to bed tonight, what are you going to be thinking about when you go to sleep? What's going to stop you from going to sleep? What's going to be playing on your mind?
Probably what I've got to do tomorrow. That's usually the thing that stops me from sleeping at night. I've been trying to do something recently, which Sarah told me I should. I've had a really bad habit for years of keeping everything in my head and then trying to remember it. And now I'm getting into the habit of every time something pops into my head, I write it down. And yeah, usually before bed, those things start to kind of come back in my brain. My phone's not with me, so I'm like, I can't write this down. I'll have to remember this till the morning. So that's usually the thing that keeps me up. The list of things to do tomorrow.
Yeah, it's good advice, I think, writing it down.
It's been really helpful, actually, because it becomes overwhelming when you've got a huge list of things that you need to do with no organization, and it's like, is this thing really important right now? And if it's not, write it down and decide a day that you want to do it in the future. And yeah, that's been working really well.
I get the impression that you're really keen on the social media side of things as well. Obviously, we've been watching what you've been doing, and you've posted lots of videos, and you've talked to camera about stuff, and it's really interesting to follow your journey. Is that something you're gonna keep on with?
I don't really like talking on camera, and Mike Mason down at Mason Brewing Co., we're good friends. He basically said to me, well, he demanded that I put myself on camera and talk about what I'm doing. So yeah, it's taking a leaf from his book and taking his suggestion to be a bit more present on social media and just tell people what we're doing. I think I've been beforehand, I basically just expected people to know, again, going back to like expecting people to know how I like things to be done. I kind of just thought that everybody would know what I'm doing rather than actually telling people. And I think it's getting to starting to use social media more and not being afraid of it and not being afraid to talk on it. Yeah, I get this kind of imposter syndrome a lot with sort of what I do, because I haven't brewed professionally all my life, and I kind of had a career beforehand, and then you kind of come into this world, and I did the kind of GCB qualification and have done well in kind of CEBA awards, and but you still get that kind of imposter syndrome. And then when you have to talk on a camera, again, there's that sort of worry there where it's just like, I don't know enough about this subject, so why should I be talking about it?
There is no way that anybody could say you don't know enough about your subject, by the way. What do you think, Dave? I mean, the knowledge shines through, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think probably a lot of brewers are just as knowledgeable, and that's not to take away from you, but like the level you will go to show your passion and talk us through it is pretty, I can't think of the word, it's pretty impressive, really. I can tell it's probably all that goes around your head most of the day, and you actually have to sort of step away and come back into what's going on in the room, because I'm probably thinking about something to do with a brewery even when you're in the kitchen or something.
Yeah, it gets a bit annoying. It's one of those things where you can't switch off from it, especially since I've been building up to this week. It goes around your head more and more, and just ideas fly around of what to do. I've got a really bad habit of not stopping and appreciating what's happened. It'll always be what's next.
Do you know, as you were talking, I was thinking, once the launch has happened, maybe you might get a little bit of time to reflect on what you've been doing up to the launch and the launch itself.
So we're launching on Friday. We're opening the bar Friday and Saturday, and then we have a semi-private event on Sunday. So Vessel's Beer Shop in Plymouth. So every year they do a tour of breweries. One year they'll go to Belgium. The other year they'll do kind of a UK-based one. So this year they're coming down to us on Sundays. They're ticking off 2 breweries with us. So they're doing us and James and Nia at Ideal Day, and then kind of moving on from us. So yeah, that's kind of the weekend sorted. But then we've got Bank Holiday Monday. So we've decided to, just take the day and decompress.
Sit in a deck chair and have a couple of beers and just think about
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll avoid the beer because it'll end up being me talking about the beer. It might move on to cocktails. Yeah, cocktails, I think.
Before we leave you to go and get on with the sort of countdown to your launch, if you could fast forward 6 months, 12 months, where would you want Coldframe to be?
Basically, what we're sort of achieving this week, a handful of craft beer focused places across the UK, stocking and pouring our beers, and kind of just sort of the 2 of us sort of doing what we're doing now, and hopefully 6 months from now, November, so the bar will be closed. So having our weekends back and kind of doing some decent trade bits across the UK.
I've drunk all 3 cans you were kind enough to send.
Oh, brilliant.
Thoroughly. And I see I've just been sat here, my own business, just drinking them away. Very nice. Really, really very drinkable. And really, all 3 of them ideal for this weather, like Dave said before, that we're having at the moment. Dave, you've gone through 2 of them, have you?
Yeah, so I had one that I think isn't going to be out just yet, potentially, or might not make the light of day, the pale 3.8%, which has got quite the litany of hops in it. And fair play, when I first opened the can, I could smell the fruit from it 10 inches away. And then as it went on, I got more of the earthy hops and the floral hops coming through. So it was a really well-balanced beer and had a lot of body for 3.8% as well. I know that's something that probably is a bit more easy to achieve these days, but I'm still always surprised when the depth of flavour and that sort of body comes through.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that's what I've generally been drinking. That one, I
can see why.
I think it's going to be one that I'm going to have to make. The kind of story behind that one was one of our hop providers left me with a load of hop samples.
I did wonder why there's 6 different hops in it. That makes sense now.
So it was just like, let's just chuck all of these in and see how it goes. And it came out really nice. And I'm glad I've written the recipe down.
Very drinkable beer again. Thank you so much for talking to us. It's been very insightful, hasn't it, Dave?
It really has. I wish you all the best with the launch. I don't think you're going to have a problem. I think your big worry about people not liking it will prove very ill-founded. I think people will love your beers. There's no reason why they shouldn't.
Thank you very much. And thanks very much for inviting me on. It's really appreciate the chance to talk to you guys.
And anytime we can help you, we're more than happy to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.